Guys. All right, so at this point, you should have brought into class today 2 copies of your bibliography. And your bibliography hopefully looks something like this, right? In MLA format, it has the word bibliography, and these would be your sources. So you should have 7, and I'd like for you to get out your copy of the bibliography right now. All right, so Mrs. Pennell should collect 1, and then you keep 1. All right, so when you have your copy of the bibliography, what I need you to do is take a pen, pencil, marker, and I want us to label each source, okay? So we're gonna give each source an assigned letter, okay? So, for example, your first source at the top, you're gonna put a big A by so that you can see. Then you're going to have B, C, and you're going to go all the way down until the letter G if you have 7 sources. If you have more than that, then just keep going, making sure you just keep assigning a different letter. All right? Because what we're going to learn how to do this week, or begin doing, is the bulk of the work for a research paper, which is the actual research. All right? Surprise! But hopefully, if you use my system, it will actually come to make sense. And I talked a little bit about it in class last week, and I'll go into a little more detail. So if you have your research folder, when you sit down to research, what you'll want to do is take one of your sources. So you'll say pull source A out, and you will have your research paper folder. And remember, inside each of the 5 envelopes is 5 index cards. So as you begin to research out of source A, anything that strikes you that might be useful for one of your 5 subpoints, you jot down on the card. And you guys can make fun of this, but this is actually an index card from when I was in college, okay? And so what you want to do is you think, oh, I need this information. So you pull out an index card from that source or that subtopic envelope in your research or in your folder, and you label it A1. And what that is going to tell you is that this piece of information came from source A on your bibliography. And everybody always thinks, oh, I'm going to remember where that came from. But just trust me, you're not, okay? Because you have 5 subtopics, and if you have 5 index cards in each envelope, then that's 25 pieces of information from 7 possible sources. So just number it A1, A2, A3. Write down the information that you want. This is obviously a direct quote. You can tell because I used quotation marks. So you have a choice. You can either write it down verbatim and put it in quotation marks, or you can paraphrase it right there, or take like a keyword outline of the important points. But here's the kicker. The page number, okay? It's got to end up on this card. Because remember, when you do an in-text cite, you will have the author's last name and the page you found it on, okay? So if it's an internet article, we've talked about that before, there aren't page numbers most of the time. But if it's a book or a magazine or any other type of print work like that, it's going to have a page number. And so it's got to get on this card, or else you're writing a rough draft and you're like flipping through a 300-page book trying to find this piece of information again, okay? So that's how you label all of these index cards. And once you have used and browsed and read through all of source A, then you move on to source B. And you do the same thing. You will label that card, here's one, B1. And once you get the information down, you stick it in the right envelope, okay? And you have to keep going until you get, I meant to check Jupyter. I can't remember if you need 4 index cards or 5 in each envelope. So if that means you need to go back and find new sources, then that's what you need to do. But you have to have that kind of support for each of your subpoints. Now, they don't all have to be statistics. Statistics and facts always good in a research paper. But sometimes, like we talked about in class, if you just get an expert who has an opinion, who will say something like, the only example I'm coming up with right now is if you have a border security agent and he says, I work where there's a wall and it doesn't work, or X number of illegal immigrants are still coming through. So then that's not like a statistic, but that's somebody who is allowed to have an opinion on that topic. So just know you're not only looking for statistics, but you're looking for words like likely, or nobody's doing climate change, but words like likely, or this is a cause of. Anything that could be argued is up for grabs for being quoted or paraphrased in your in-text sites of your paper. Okay? So the last thing I want to talk about real quickly on this video is, what do I do when I'm staring at a 300-page book? And obviously, I'm not expecting you to read it word for word before next week. So just use your common sense. First, right, open up to the chapter titles, if it has chapter titles. Do any of the chapters lead you to believe that there would be information in them from one of your 5 subpoints? If the book has an index, then go to the back of the book and look up each of your 5 subpoints or words related to it in the index. And those will send you to the right page numbers. So you're kind of scanning for information through these books, because obviously, like I say, you don't have to read the whole book, okay? But once you're done going through all 7 sources, which is your homework for next week, you've got to go back and you have to do 2 things. 1, look inside each envelope and count the number of cards. Do you have 5? Okay? Hopefully they're not all 5 from the same source. It just lends credibility to your argument when you have multiple sources telling you the same information. Then you need to go through your index cards and recognize, did I use an index card from every source? Okay, so you might find that you have an entire envelope that's empty. So you have a couple of choices. We talked in class, that's when you go to the computer and you Google that subpoint or a question related to it to find some sources to back that up. Add them to your bibliography, okay? Make a new letter, H. The other option you have is, because now you've done the research, is there another subpoint that would be easy to argue because you've been seeing this point over and over in your other 7 sources? So you're also then free to scratch out the subpoint title on your envelope and make a new one. Like, it's a new subpoint, and go back and find 5 index cards that will go on that. So there's 2 choices, but this is a really clear and easy way before we even begin writing the paper to ensure that we have enough information to write a 5-page paper and that we have all 7 sources. Okay, so hopefully you have brought in 3 of your non-internet sources. Mrs. Pinnell is going to check those and give you points just for having brought them in. And I believe that you will have time during this class period to get started with your index cards and researching in them. So use your time wisely, because the research portion is easy to get bogged down in some of the details and the quantity of information that I'm asking you to take into your brain. And so these index cards help you to release these pieces of information and have them organized before you even get started. Okay, good luck.